Once again, Mr. Suhaimi, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Good morning and Assalamualaikum to everyone. I think here in Malaysia, we're still in Raya mood, but rest assured, work remains. And I think obviously, first and foremost, welcome to this Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone Joint Business and Investment Forum. And the first panel discussion will discuss about JS-SEZ as ASEAN's next investment powerhouse. And we certainly have the right set of panelists for this session coming from policy making and policy execution side, as well as industry and business representatives. So allow me to spend a bit of time to properly introduce our panelists. Immediately to my left is Yang Berbahagia Datuk Sheikh Samsul Ibrahim Sheikh Abdul Majid. Yang Berbahagia Datuk is the Chief Executive Officer of Malaysian Investment Development Authority, or MIDA. His career with MIDA began in August 1996, and over the decade, Yang Berbahagia Datuk has held key positions in MIDA, including as Executive Director for Manufacturing Development and Investment Promotion, and a Senior Executive Director of Investment Policy Advocacy. And under his leadership, divisions focusing on electronics, machinery and metal, transportation, and building technologies have seen unprecedented growth and innovation. Dato also, I believe, had stints overseas, in the United States, in Japan, and Singapore. Next to Dato is Mr. Jermaine Loy. He was appointed as Managing Director of Singapore's Economic Development Board, EDB, on 1st March 2025. So congratulations on your appointment, first and foremost. Jermaine also chairs the Design Singapore Advisory Board and also served on the boards of EDBI and the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. And before joining EDB, Jermaine served in the Prime Minister's office between April 2021 and December 2024 as the Principal Private Secretary to the then Prime Minister and current Senior Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong. And prior to that, he has worked on various portfolios across Singapore's public service, including the Ministry of National Development, the Ministry of Health, as well as the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We also have with us this morning Mr. Jacob Lee. He's the Vice President of the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, FMM. Jacob champions industry growth, digital adoption, and export competitiveness. He also served as Chairman of the Business Advisory Group of Malaysia-Taiwan Trade and Investment under the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, strengthening cross-border business ecosystem and SME development. Jacob is also the board member of the Malaysia Productivity Corporation and the Malaysian Standards Development Authority for Mechanical and Electrical. He's also an entrepreneur, being the founder of ASLI Mechanicals in Sdn Bhd, as well as Tiger IoT Private Limited. Last but not least, Mr. Kok Peng Soon, Chief Executive Officer of the Singapore Business Federation, SBF, that represents Singapore's business community and trade, investment, and industrial relations. Prior to his current appointment, Peng Soon was Chief Executive of the Government Technology Agency of Singapore, GovTech, a leading agency driving Singapore's Smart Nation Initiative and public sector digital transformation. He also held various positions in the Ministry of Manpower, National Security Coordination Secretariat, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Singapore Tourism Board, Contact Singapore, and EDB. He also served on the board of SBF Holdings, SBF Connect, Singapore Business Federation Foundation, Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority, Global Compact Network Singapore, Singapore Pools, and the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore. Peng Soon is also a member of Singapore International Arbitration Center, Singapore International Mediation Center, NUS Institute of Systems Sciences, National Integration Council, and a fellow member of Singapore Computer Society. A very busy man indeed, but I'm sure all the panelists are very busy, and I'm very thankful for them to be with us this morning. Now, I want to start the session not by peppering our panelists with questions. In fact, what I want to do for the first 10 to 15 minutes of this session, maybe an average of 3 minutes each of you, for you to make a pitch, especially business and investors, about JS-SEZ. Maybe start with Dato' first.
Thank you, Suhaimi, for the kind introduction. Well, to me, Johor-SEZ is timely and significant. You know why? Because of few factors. One is about ASEAN as the economic powerhouse, and all the numbers that research done by many of these reputable organizations, research houses, showing that ASEAN is the next, growth area, right? You looked at the numbers of ASEAN population, it will be about 690 to 700 million people by 2030. Yeah, investment is about 170 billion annually, and it's steady. And you looked at all the companies, foreign companies that have been establishing in ASEAN. I think those that have regional headquarters here is about more than 5,000. You're talking about ASEAN as a whole, right? And 80% of these Fortune 500 companies are having their affiliation in ASEAN. So if you looked at the ASEAN as a market, is very promising. 70%. Some study shows that 70% of the population will be in the middle income class. So this is a natural choice for, this area is a natural choice for investors to consider doing business in JS-SEZ, right? Because then you have all the market access in ASEAN. So the other thing is that this JS-SEZ is not a new area. It has been there, with all the connectivities, for example. Of course, we need to improve those connectivity angle where Singapore and Malaysia work very hard to ensure that movement of people, movement of goods, will be seamless. I think it's at the end of the discussion for us to have this movement of people and goods, talking about QR code clearance, for example, without having to produce your passports and so on so forth. And customs from both sides are actually been discussing to ensure that movement of goods seamless as well. And this Johor-Singapore SEZ area is targeting this high value, high growth sector, because I think we are, these areas are different from the other areas in the region, for example. And we see that Johor-SEZ is a place where you can attract more high value and high growth sectors. For example, last year, we have approved about 700 over projects, and most of them are in manufacturing. And out of those in Johor, out of those 700 over projects, about 550 or 560 projects are actually located in Johor-SEZ. It shows the attraction of Johor-SEZ to what they call host these high value, high growth sectors. So what we want is to move up the value chain within the existing industry cluster, and also to create new cluster for Johor-SEZ. We have got good medical devices companies, semiconductor companies in this area. So we think that we can pull through some of these high value and high growth projects, in this region moving on. And I think last year alone, I think we have achieved about 50 over projects in high value and high growth sectors. Of course, The other portion is the strong institutional policy and institutional support for this area. Yeah, the incentives are tailor-made, to attract these high value and high growth sectors into the country. I mean, into what we call Singapore SEZ. And of course, the facilitation part is equally important, where once it got approved, we want to ensure that all these projects are implemented. And the implementation rate in 2023, for example, we have achieved, in Johor-SEZ, have achieved more than 80%. So to us, it's very high, right, as far as implementation rate of these projects. And you are also aware that we have just established, and in fact, you just launched this IMFCJ. The idea is for this office, with the presence of MIDA, IRDA, Invest Johor, and few other agencies that are very important, to ensure that all these projects, be it for them to come for approvals, for permits, and on daily operations that they are having issues and whatnot, can be what we call resolved amicably. So these are actually facilitation that will drive more investment into Johor-SEZ. So I stop at this point first, then later maybe Q&A, or you can continue with the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Reto. Jermaine.
Well, first, a very good morning to Excellencies, distinguished guests, and to Mr. Suhaimi. Thank you very much for a very kind introduction. From Singapore EDB's perspective, we are very excited by these opportunities presented by the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone. As was spoken about, Southeast Asia is a region of immense growth potential, rapidly expanding middle class, increasing industrialization, growing digitalization. And so Singapore and Malaysia are at the heart of this very vibrant region. And so we see great opportunities for businesses, for investors, for individuals. And from Malaysia and Singapore, it's a long-standing partnership with our economies closely linked and intertwined. And we recognize this potential to leverage on our complementary strengths, for instance, on Singapore's infrastructure or financial systems, Johor's strategic location, resources, and growing industrial base. It's a powerful synergy that we see, and we think it benefits both countries. And in fact, the Johor-Singapore SEZ, we see it as a win-win-win-win. A win for Malaysia in terms of new economic growth here in Johor. It's a win for Singapore, enhancing our economic competitiveness. It's a win for businesses, looking at the growth opportunities, seamless, efficient cross-border operations, and integrated regional strategy. It's also a win for the region here in Southeast Asia in terms of fostering economic integration and cooperation. So really very much a win-win-win-win. Now, we see this concept of, this model of twinning in terms of economic development is not a new one. As has been mentioned, we've already seen many successful examples of companies setting up operations in both Singapore and also in Johor, and leveraging the strengths of each location, tapping on the best that each has to offer. And as we move forward on the Johor-Singapore SEZ, our goal must be to double down on these opportunities, make full use of this advantage that we have, attract new global investors, particularly in areas like manufacturing, in terms of supply chain, logistics, digital economy, and more, and to tap on this to bring better opportunities for Malaysia, for Singapore, and also for the region. So I'll pause there for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jermaine. Jacob, what's your pitch from a perspective of, an entrepreneur yourself, and coming from a body that represents Malaysian industry?
Thank you, Suhaimi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I see YB Liu Ting Tong here. Immediately reminds me a gift that he gave to me. His book, The Second Takeoff. Okay, and in his book he says the second takeoff for Malaysia will happen in Johor. Okay, so we're very excited, like other panelists, that this Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone finally are being pushed out, okay? I want to tell you a small story. In 2022, when the National Chambers of Commerce in Malaysia, led by our former president, Tan Sri Sotenlai, we pay a courtesy visit to Singapore MTI. We met the minister then, okay? In fact, FMM has proposed to her to set up a special economic or special industry zone between Singapore and Johor. So, and we are glad that our proposal are also met with the same mindset of our leaders. And we are very happy and want to congratulate the Malaysian government, especially in particular, the Johor State government for realizing, for pushing out this special economic zone. This is a well-designed and strategic industry zone or business zone. We believe that it will be a game changer for the transformations of the Malaysian, especially the manufacturing industry. And we do hope that with more multinational corporations coming in, the big boys, they will bring about the further development and transformations of our SMEs in Malaysia. Malaysia, we have like 98% of our corporations are SME or MSMEs. And we want to believe that there is a lot of imagination that we can do with our SMEs. We hope that with the big boys here, anchor in Johor, will bring about a cluster formation and bring about the vendor development, putting more resources into research and development. As what YB Liu has mentioned, not just made by Malaysia. It's not just made, it's made by Malaysians and designed by Malaysians. So we hope this will bring about a great change. And we also wish to propose bringing back the revival of this regional distribution center in Malaysia and also the international procurement center scheme. This will allow companies to pool their resources, strengthen the QC, and making Malaysia the distribution hub for the supply chain. With that, FMM is also proposing to MITI to set up a national supply chain council. And being the chair of ASEAN this year, Malaysia, we also wish to propose the formations of the ASEAN integrated supply chain network for ASEAN. Further to that, with the post-COVID-19 and incidents, our experience know that food security becomes a national security issue, becomes a great importance for the stability and also the security of the nation. We also wish to suggest that an agro-processing and cold chain network to be in place, and in, not just in Johor, but also in other states of Malaysia. So this is my some of the recommendations from the Federations of Malaysian Manufacturing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob. Peng Sun would like to hear your perspective.
Thanks, Suhaimi. Thank you, Suhaimi, and good morning, Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to join you this morning. I think most of my panelists have shared a sense of excitement and optimism. Of course, from Singapore Business Federation, we are equally excited and optimistic. But I do want to share sentiments that, you know, the optimism is, of course, pampered with a little bit of a cautiousness. And I'll be candid, you know, to say that, as the minister have said, this is the third time of economic integration. So the question is whether will third time be the charm. I think we certainly hope that to be the case. Because I think if you take a step back and you look at the economic imperative, it's a no-brainer, right? We talk about it, the land area that we have, 5 times the size of Singapore. So the potential of JS-SEZ to help our Singapore businesses to overcome that three inherent constraints that we have operating in Singapore: land, manpower, and energy. Right? These are the three constraints that's limiting Singapore businesses' growth. So obviously, the benefits are very clear. And in our conversation with businesses, we led a business delegation here, about 200 companies in January, February. We've been actively following up with them. There are three things that companies are increasingly looking for in Johor. Number one, companies that are in Singapore that are expanding are certainly seeing JS-SEZ as a gateway to Malaysia. Right? They can expand their operations, they can leverage on the resources in Johor, both in terms of land, skilled manpower, as well as a growing supporting industry, as has been said. But number two that's more exciting are companies that are increasingly looking for twinning opportunities. Now, if the flow of people and goods, certainly if the flow of people on an everyday basis could be like our experience this morning, it would be fantastic. You can really have an integrated economic zone that can leverage on the best of both worlds. Right? Singapore is both business hub, it's tech hub, it's financial hub, and leveraging on the resources and growing supporting industry in Malaysia. So twinning operations is very key. But the third thing that I think increasingly when we talk to companies now, especially as the minister has said, as companies look at moving from a just-in-time to a just-in-case, I think there is a potential, notwithstanding the global trade war, for us to leverage on this opportunity to strengthen the Johor-Singapore axis as an economic powerhouse in Southeast Asia. And I think that's the game, right? Investment in Johor-Singapore SEZ is not a win just for Malaysia or for Singapore, but together. And I think the more that we can complement each other through a twinning operation that leverage on both, I think the stronger we can be as an economic powerhouse with this Singapore and Johor economic axis. So I'll stop there for now and we can discuss more on how to make it happen.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen. So we've heard sound bites from our panelists in terms of their pitch, their thoughts, their perspective about JS-SEZ. Maybe now is the time when I start asking questions. I guess given the topic of this panel session, ultimately about how Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone can be ASEAN's next investment powerhouse, I guess naturally the sort of first lines of question would be focusing on the Special Economic Zone as a platform, a strategic platform for investment growth and supply chain diversification or reordering or reconstruction, if you can put it that way. I would like to ask Dato' maybe can elaborate a little bit more about how businesses in Malaysia, in Singapore, and for that matter from all over the world can leverage on JS-SEZ and draw on the strength of both countries to tap into the broader opportunities of ASEAN.
Thank you. Well, as some of the panelists also mentioned, the strength of Singapore and strength of Malaysia, in particular Johor. If you looked at, for example, Singapore, they are very strong in logistics, and as well as as a country that is famously known for trading hub, right? And in Johor-SEZ is also very strong in the manufacturing, advanced manufacturing angle. So this combination of both actually will give a lot of opportunities for companies, right? To look at what they call Johor-Singapore SEZ as a place for them to do business, and to explore market, ASEAN market as a whole. You see, one of the interesting point when we looked at the numbers and so on, between 5 to 2016, if you looked at intra-ASEAN, we are not just looking at investment from other countries, non-ASEAN countries, but within ASEAN, for the last 10 years was negative. Yeah, from 2016 to 2025, negative 2.3%, and compared with 2006 to 2015, it was 12.5%. So if you looked at opportunities within ASEAN, as far as investment is concerned, is huge, but it's going down, to negative 2.3%. So I would say that the opportunity is not just for foreign companies from outside ASEAN, but within ASEAN as well, where you can, other ASEAN companies, be it Singapore, I believe many of those investment in Johor originated from Singapore as well, right? Be it Singapore homegrown companies or foreign companies that are established in Singapore. So this area, I believe, is what you call that can provide that what you call opportunities in the region. And as I also mentioned earlier, the facilitation that we are providing is another key factor for us to what you call support all these foreign investments, right? In Johor-SEZ. And as what Jacob mentioned earlier on, the role of local companies. This is another angle where we can provide to MNCs that are operating in JS-SEZ, local companies that can be supplier to all these, vendors to all these MNCs. In fact, tomorrow we have about 7 of them. 6 are foreign companies, I think mainly from the US. I'm not sure why, but I think all of us know perhaps one of the reason, right? Because of the US tariff hike. But one of them is actually local company. So it's not just about foreign companies providing these what they call opportunities to our local players as vendors and as suppliers, but also the local companies. So, and MIDA is doing whatever we can, to support the local what they call players to be in this, to be integrated with MNCs as suppliers and vendor development. We work closely with the chambers, for example, FMM or our national chambers to provide these opportunities. And obviously, other than facilitation, incentive actually plays an important role. I think we thank Ministry of Finance as well to be able to design tailor-made incentives for those companies. Thank you.
Thanks, Dato'. Jermaine, from your perspective, where do you see the exciting emerging opportunities in JS-SEZ? I mean, beyond the usual narrative about Singapore's strength in certain aspects of services like financial, logistics, trade, and Malaysia, as I suppose, Johor's comparative advantage when it comes to manufacturing. I'm interested to know about your thoughts with regards to, I suppose, the future growth story or the future economy, like digital, like green. Where do you see this thing, and how is JS-SEZ is relevant in that sense?
Thanks, Suhaimi. Well, maybe I'll just make a couple of points on that. But I thought I should still reiterate this whole fundamental concept that the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone really is built on this idea of complementarity. I mean, I know you mentioned it, but it is really important to reinforce this point that's really about leveraging the strengths of both Singapore and Johor. And it is with this partnership and the view that we can make this whole region more attractive, right, to not just global investors, but also internally within the region, right, and allow both Singapore and Johor to better compete and capture some of these new opportunities emerging from this region. And the main point is this. It is not a binary choice, right? It is not a binary choice of investing either in Singapore or in Johor, but it is about setting up the ecosystem and the frameworks and the environment so that companies can think about how to set up operations in each country, on each side, that best tap on the proximity and best tap on the country's relative strengths. I think that's important to reiterate fundamentally. I know we talked about how Singapore already plays host to HQs, advanced manufacturing facilities, R&D of many global companies, and it is important that we think about how we can then facilitate and allow companies to also potentially explore setting up, twinning facilities in Johor that complements these activities in Singapore. So that's the first point, right? The second is that on Singapore's end, we are very keen and committed to working towards mutually beneficial outcomes, and we're working very closely with the Malaysian government on this. Very ambitious targets as well. Joint targets of 50 projects in 5 years, 100 projects in 10. And across the 11 different priority sectors that I think the Malaysian government has identified. So I mean, you talked about digital and green, and indeed, these are areas that I think Johor has done very well in. Just take, for example, in the digital economy, Johor's data center capacity has grown from 10 megawatts in 2021 to over 1.5 gigawatts in 2024. We have key names such as GDS, Princeton Digital Group, Equinix, all setting up shop here. These are the big boys. And we also see from our side opportunities to partner in the digital economy, to integrate our digital systems, and to facilitate business transactions. Sustainability is, of course, another important topic. So, I mean, you mentioned green. It's not just for Johor and Singapore, but more importantly for broader region and also for the rest of the world. And there's much room for both our sides to work more closely, for instance, in areas like carbon credits cooperation, and also even in renewable energy trading. I think maybe more specific to your question, more directly, we see immediate opportunities. This has been mentioned in manufacturing, in logistics and supply chain. The important point to note is this: we're not starting from zero base. I think that's very important, right? In fact, Singapore-Johor partnership is long-standing, and we have many companies that have demonstrated how a twinning model has helped them to get the best out of Singapore and in Johor. And this brings me to my third point. Maybe let me just outline 3 possible archetypes that we are thinking of, right? First is companies new to the region and considering a first landing point here in Southeast Asia. And this is where Singapore and Johor's complementary strengths is a very attractive proposition to such companies. I'll give you one example. This is the SPC Group. It's a Korean food and confectionery company. You might know them because they own Paris Baguette. They have their regional HQ in Singapore, which houses admin functions and also their regional innovation centers and central kitchen. But more importantly, Paris Baguette launched its Halal Food Hub right here in Johor, manufacturing its product meant for the halal market across the whole of Southeast Asia and the Middle East markets. Right? So that's the first archetype. The second are those that were companies with already an existing base in Singapore and looking to expand and leverage resources here in Johor to expand their operations. One example is IPEX. It's a Japanese manufacturer of precision components. It's its HQ and manufacturing facility in Singapore, looking at precision modules for semiconductors, electronics, and other automotive industries. Johor now hosts IPEC's largest manufacturing facility outside of Japan, okay? Manufacturing electronics and automotive centers. And so that's the second example. And the third archetype, I think that this has been mentioned as well, regional distribution centers, right? Companies looking to set up some of these regional distribution centers or to undertake supply chain management. DHL is a good example. Recently opened its first supply hub in Johor near Senai International Airport, which complements DHL's supply chain hub and warehouses in Singapore. So these are just 3 possible archetypes. These are just some examples, but all in all, these portend good and emerging opportunities that we see right here in the region and that we think we should make the most use of. Thank you.
Thanks, Jermaine. It's very interesting examples that you give in terms of the opportunities that can emerge out of JS-SEZ in terms of twinnings, in terms of finding synergies between Malaysia and Singapore to serve as a platform for the broader regional market and global markets. Maybe the next set of questions, I think, revolve around incentives, because naturally when we talk about special economic zones, people would definitely ask the question, what kind of incentive I can get? How do we attract investments and businesses into the region? Maybe I'll start with Ping Soon. Obviously, JS-SEZ has garnered a lot of interest from investors, including Singapore's local companies and SMEs. I mean, how does the JS-SEZ help Singapore's businesses expand their footprint, and what's the incentive available?
Sure, thanks, Suhaimi. I've covered some of those benefits for Singapore, but I thought I would like to just add 3 more examples to what Jermaine has said in terms of what companies are looking for. And I want to reinforce the point that it's really about looking for the synergies in terms of the twinning. I think one sector that's getting a lot of headline nowadays is semiconductors. I think we're still waiting, to see whether it's any industry-specific tariff on semiconductors. But be that as it may, I think semiconductor present a very interesting case study of how Singapore and Malaysia can successfully twin. Now, you think about it, if you break down the semiconductor value chain, I think the front-end fabrication, the high value-added operations, which Singapore has many, can continue to be in Singapore. I know JS-SEZ is going for high value-added activities. Semiconductor is certainly high value. But no matter how high value you have, there will be comparatively some more labor-intensive operations. And when you talk about semiconductor, if you break it down, the fabrication can be in Singapore. But guess what? I think the assembly and test could potentially be in Johor. Right? The assembly and test could be in Johor. The warehousing could be in Johor. And if the twinning is successful, I think the transportation of these goods across between Singapore and Malaysia would actually attract much lower green carbon emissions. Right? You not have a lot of carbon footprint because it's actually very near. So semiconductors operation is, I think, one good example where potentially Singapore and Malaysia can twin. The second one, I think Jermaine talked about Paris Baguette. So I think I remember reading about this. I think it's been already announced in food technology with a company called AgroCrop. It's an agri-commodities company, a food ingredient company, headquarters in Singapore. Guess what? They recently did a tie-up with the Singapore Institute of Technology to develop a new technology on the plant protein extraction. So the R&D was done in Singapore through a tie-up of a Singapore Institute of Technology, but they need to look for a facility to do the downstream plant extraction protein. And they decided to set it up in Johor. So again, that shows that the R&D is done in Singapore. You need to have a very close nexus between the R&D team as well as eventually plant operations. So they have decided to do it in Johor. The third one, Jermaine talked about sustainable development, talk about data center. In many of these data centers, one of the critical part of it is actually batteries. Right? You need to have the battery to store it. And we have a company called GoPig, a Singapore-listed company, very big in consumer batteries operations. They have production facilities in China. So as part of the overall re-looking at the supply chain, they've decided, I think they've recently announced a $150 million US investment, I think facilitated by UOB through their Green Lane investment, to set up in Johor. So they are doing that. It's a very state-of-the-art nickel manufacturing, battery manufacturing operation in Johor. So again, it's a good example. Singapore-listed company, production facilities in China to serve China, but as they reorientate to look at additional production facility, they decided to put in Johor. So I think the possibilities are there, but I think there's a big if. Right? People are looking to say that, okay, all these are potential. Can the potential be realized? And that's where we're looking forward to both the Singapore and the Malaysia government to make some of the early initiatives that's announced happen. We talk about seamless flow of people, the QR code clearance. We talk about reducing customs clearance for goods as well. We talk about developing of a skilled workforce in Johor. The businesses is very happy to note that the early initiatives include ties up between the Institute of Higher Learning in Singapore as well as in Malaysia. So you can train up a workforce that supports a company. And we are certainly very delighted with the setup of the Invest Malaysia Facilitation Center for Johor. And I'm glad that the focus of facilitation is not just in the investment approval process, but the entire life cycle value chain. So I think all these are possibilities. We just want to see things happening on the ground. Then companies can start having the confidence to move forward with their plans.
Thanks, Ping Soon. That's a good segue for me to ask Dato' questions about what you mentioned earlier, Dato'. We are kind of moving away from generic incentive to something that's more tailor-made to make it relevant for, I suppose, more on the ground level in terms of what industries, even specifically business and companies want. So maybe Dato' can explain a bit, when it comes to coming up with these tailor-made incentives from a perspective of, I suppose, Malaysia side. What are the key considerations when we evaluate the eligibility of investors, businesses for incentives?
Well, it's not just JS-SEZ, but the whole of Malaysia. I think now the government is looking at what are the impacts that the country will get out of this incentive that we are giving, right? Is going to be outcome-based. And, you know, through incentive, we want to basically engineer what sort of industries that we want to bring over to Malaysia, including Johor-Singapore SEZ. So just want to elaborate a bit more on this flagship area, about 7 of them, which include 2 in areas in Pengerang and as well as in Forest City. For Johor Bahru, Waterfront City Centre, for example, is for business services, digital economy, and health. Yeah, incentive is from Global Services Hub for regional headquarters, treasury centres, high-value digital activities, and urban healthcare services. So these are some of the new activities that we want to bring over. And Johor Bahru, Waterfront and City Centre will be the location for these activities, right? Iskandar Putri, manufacturing, business services, digital economy, education, health, and tourism. So again, some of the incentives that we can offer is global services hubs, yeah? To support diverse industrial, digital education, healthcare, and tourism sectors, right? And then for Tanjung Pelepas, Tanjung Bin is manufacturing, energy, logistics, right? So what Malaysian government can offer is smart logistic complex incentives for tech-driven logistics, manufacturing, and energy operations, leveraging port infrastructure. So these are examples of how through incentives, we can attract those high value and high growth industries that we want to bring over to JS-SEZ. Obviously, with the support of Singapore government, right? With what they call joint missions that we're going to do. For example, well, Jermaine is new, but I've discussed this with your what they call predecessor. Maybe we can discuss this in details. How do we then target those companies that we want to bring over and will make that spillover happen? And of course, to excite them, we'll offer some of the incentives that I mentioned earlier on, but that is just an example. Right? We have a few more incentives that are designed for some of these high value and high growth sectors.
Yeah. Do look forward for more discussion between MIDA and EDB, because obviously I think there was that mention about 50 catalytic projects in the first 5 years, and then another 100 catalytic projects in the total first 10 years of JS-SEZ. Yes. Jacob, from a businessman perspective, I mean, besides incentives, what are the key considerations that company would look into when they decide to do investment or business in JS-SEZ?
Thank you, Suhaimi. Well, in the YB's opening speech, he asked the question, will JS-SEZ work or succeed, And, well, to the Singaporeans friends here, I would say, why choose other place but not Malaysia? Because Johor is just at your doorstep. So that is a very natural way to choose a destination. Well, beside the so-called comprehensive incentive attached to this JS-SEZ, and I do think that many companies are looking at also the country profile, especially in this very volatile business environment. Post-COVID-19, we learn about the threat of supply chain disruption. In the Mr. Trump's 2.0 era, we talk about the tariff, and so that could actually bring about a very stiff competitions and relocations of the manufacturing bases. Malaysia being a very investor-friendly country, we have signed 16 FTA, we are also members of this RCEP and CPTPP. The Malaysia and the European Union's free trade agreements, we have resuming our talk, and also other free trade agreements with the Arabian countries are also in process. So, so it is a very business friendly nation. Besides that, when we talk about the green economy, the sustainability, well, Malaysia has a very aggressive plan in terms of our energy transition program. We have the blueprint or the roadmap for the national energy transition roadmap, targeting 2050 to achieve the net zero carbon emission. I think that will be very helpful, especially when you supply to MNC. A big concern is on the talents, on the workforce. We have 92 universities all over Malaysia, producing about 270,000 graduates every year, supplying to the workforce. And we also have like 1,345 TVET institutions, producing about 74,000 TVET students. And 94.5% of these students from TVETs are being employed. So there is a very steady, sufficient supply of talents in Malaysia. Of course, Malaysia, we have to address the brain drain challenges, okay? But brain drain is unavoidable. Even Singaporeans are working overseas, okay? It is a kind of a modern lifestyle. Our young people, you know, when they graduate, they want to see the world, they want to have different exposures, working everywhere. And so I think that's inevitable. Perhaps FMM has always been advocating to the Malaysian government to have probably, you know, talents mobility, you know, within ASEAN countries, okay? When people take our talents, we can take talents from other places. So that should be the way, you know, because even you can see USA, you know, a lot of, they're taking our talents from everywhere in the world, okay? But their talents are also working elsewhere. So talent is one important consideration, and I don't think talent is an issue, because as long as you give them the right remuneration, and I do think that they will stay, okay? I am the chairman for the Business Advisory Group for Malaysia and Taiwan, and in many of our meetings, I have always heard of Taiwanese company telling their friends in Vietnam, in Cambodia, and even back in Taiwan, that Malaysia is the best place to put up their factory there. So it has been, I've heard many stories like that, saying that Malaysia is a very ideal place for investment. The strategic location, okay, we are next to Singapore, okay, just one bridge away. This is a very strategic location. It's a gateway to ASEAN. We can tap on the high-level experts or high technology from Singapore, and also a gateway to ASEAN and to the world. You have one of the best airports in the world. Your port is always ranked among the top. So I think connectivity is excellent. So the location is strategic. So these are all the pull factors that could make JS-SEZ successful, and why businesses would want to choose JS-SEZ. In fact, we have received some inquiry from our members saying that JS-SEZ is too exclusive. You know, it should be opened up to some conventional manufacturing, because it seems to place emphasis on like AI, on digitalizations, on, you know, some other very advanced industry. When the conventional manufacturers look at this, they say, we don't have a share in it. So we do hope that, MIDA or JS-SEZ, the Invest Malaysia, should look into more inclusive, giving others conventional manufacturing also a chance to participate in this project. Thank you.
Jacob touched on this, I suppose, a hot button topic of talents. And I would like to get reaction, response, thoughts from the other panelists on this issue of talent vis-a-vis JS-SEZ. Is it something that potentially can make or break JS-SEZ? Maybe we can start with Ping Soon first.
No, I agree. I think the three things that Singapore businesses are looking, to see that both governments move forward. We talk a lot about the ease of flow of people and goods. I think that's well covered. I think the second bucket is really the availability of skilled talent. And I'm glad to know that there are certainly many universities over here, but I think Johor in itself is also running short of labor as well. So the question now is, it's not just the availability of labor, but the skill acquisition of this group of people. Which is why, as I said, when we saw the agreement that was signed, there was some mention about collaboration between, I mentioned, the Singapore Institute of Learning, as well as their counterparts in Malaysia. What we hope is that some of this training collaboration can be done while recognizing mutual recognitions of frameworks. We hope that the training that's being done in Johor can be guided by the initial route of investments that are coming in, so that after training, they can immediately get jobs in those companies. So that's one thing. And with that, I think the key thing is how can we make Johor as a magnet talent also for other parts of Malaysia, that they will want to come over and work in Johor-SEZ. So that's one aspect in addressing the talent. But no matter what, right, in terms of getting the Malaysia talent flow, you will still need to bring in foreign talent somewhere. Then the question is whether JS-SEZ can also be a home for foreigners from outside of Singapore, Malaysia, right? There is already a digital nomad scheme that I'm aware of that Malaysia has. There's for facilitate the movement of foreigners in and out of Malaysia, focusing on the digital jobs. So just as my friend Jacob said, whether that whole thing can look beyond, right, just digital nomads, to actually facilitate perhaps foreigners who are working in Singapore, but are able to actually live in Malaysia, right, and then commute on a daily basis over to support the operations in Singapore. So some of these additional considerations are, I think, what businesses are looking for to address the talent. Not just relying on Singapore talent, Malaysia talent, but really, in the whole region. And that JS-SEZ can be a place for them to live, for them to work, and go to work depending on where the complementarity is between operations in Singapore and Malaysia.
Okay, we've heard from representatives from businesses and industry on talent. I want to hear reactions from policy-making agencies on the issue of talents.
Well, thanks, Suhaimi. No, I must say I agree with what Ping Soon has mentioned. It's really about how we can work together to make sure to train a supply of industry-ready skills and talent. I think that's the most important point. And I think what's also important is to go back to what we're trying to do. This Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, it's really about making this area, this region, both sides attractive, not just for capital, but also for talent, right? Not just for within Malaysia or from Singapore, but regionally, and ideally also globally. That's what makes us competitive, and that's what gives this particular project a competitive edge. So I think that's how we look at it, and that's how we will approach this issue in terms of talent, because really that's fundamentally about making sure the skilled and available labor is available.
Dato'?
Thank you. Well, I concur with all the three panelists as well, talking about how important talent, to ensure that this JS-SEZ, can achieve a successful, journey, right? For Malaysia, Singapore, I think we have agreed under the JS-SEZ to establish this Talent Development Council, right? That is to basically to work together on how do we, provide this training and the appropriate skill set to develop appropriate skill sets for these high growth and high value industries. That is one. And Johor alone, I think they also have this initiative called Johor Talent Development Council, right? Again, that will actually facilitate on the upskilling, training. It's not just for what we call MNCs, but also for local companies that will then support this operation of MNCs over here. In MIDA, we have one division called Talent Industry Management Division, where we are looking at the demand side. Talent that are required by companies that have already decided to invest here, right? That is for the whole nationwide, and we work very closely with the Ministry of Higher Education, for example. We've signed an MOU with them. Some of the companies have enrolled to these what we call projects, that they want to have talents for the expansion, their new projects, and so on and so forth. So this can also, in fact, this will be extended to Johor-Singapore SEZ. In fact, the recent one that we have signed, the MOU, is with the MTONs, the technical universities as well, for them to look at training the new, what we call, the talent for new industries, semiconductors, medical devices. Even the recent one is ARM, where MIDA is very much involved in the training of about 10,000 IC designers. So it's tall order for us. Within, I think, 10 years, this is about 10,000, I think, for us to develop this. It's an ongoing thing, I would say. It takes years for us to provide this talent for the right industries, especially in Johor-Singapore SEZ.
Thank you, Dato'. So we've talked about talent, and earlier there's some sound bites about incentives. There's another in that I want to touch on, that is infrastructure. I guess the view out here is, infrastructure in Malaysia, Singapore, pretty advanced. So I'm just wondering aloud whether the panel members have any thought about what else on infrastructure? What are the things that can be expand, improve from where we are now? What are the critical one with regards to a special economic zone like JS-SEZ?
Well, I'll start. I think the businesses are looking forward to end 2026, right, with the RTS link. I heard the capacity was 10,000 per hour. I think that would, I hope, really relieve the flow of people. That's one. But I think the people flow can be addressed by RTS. Of course, the question is that after the RTS come over to Johor, the integrated development over there will be pretty important because you need that dispersal point. But I think what is equally important are the infrastructure for goods and cargo flow, right? We know infrastructure development takes time. Yes, we can help in terms of reducing the customs immigration form from 2 form to 1 form and all that, but there will always be a choke point. The question is that, if some of the people flow capacity can be relieved through RTS, then what can we do with existing infrastructure, land infrastructure particularly, to support, the flow of goods and services, particularly with the twinning operation. We talk about the semiconductor. If it's really going to be twinning, there's many in and out just on a day basis. So how can you facilitate that flow? How can we talk about infrastructure development in terms of maybe a bonded warehouse, right? That goods that are produced, right, and finally finishing touches in Malaysia can be cleared at the bonded warehouse and straight through and leverage on the connectivity in Singapore, both the airports and the ports. So these are the additional infrastructure that can be created. If indeed there's twinning operation, can there be extra landing points between Singapore and Malaysia? May not need to build a new bridge. Are there possibility of ferry flows, right, using the sea, between, maybe the Tuas side and Puteri Harbour side? So these are the sort of infrastructure development that I think we hope can be considered as the twinning operations get realized over time.
Maybe Jermaine, Dato', any thoughts from that particular perspective with regards to infrastructure pertaining to facilitating the faster movement, the clearing goods?
Well, on the faster movement, I think my colleague has already mentioned that. Basically on Singapore side they are ready. I heard. On the Malaysian side, it's still at the final stage. They are talking about using some technology or devices that can scan your retina or something like that, right? but let the what do you call agency that is responsible for it to announce this. But what I want to touch on is the infrastructure, basically talking about providing renewable energy. That is something that RE100 companies are looking at right now. We have one initiative by Sunrise, if I'm not mistaken, that will be looking at this green industry park, where they can also provide renewable energy for companies. That basically is not by choice, but they need to use this renewable energy because the customer wants them to use renewable energy. So it is very important. You're talking about high growth, high value sectors, but if you're not able to provide this renewable energy, then it will be a bottleneck for JS-SEZ to entice all these companies that are looking at achieving net zero ambition, whether at company firm level or even at country level. You looked at European countries; they are they will institute this CBAM by 2026 or 2027. So you need to get ready for that market as well. So one of the important infrastructure is on renewable energy, provision of this supply of renewable energy.
Thank you, Dato'. I remember when JS-SEZ agreement was signed, and one of the things that was mentioned, at least by YB Dato' Sri Rafizi, Economy Minister, was there's going to be a joint promotion of JS-SEZ by Malaysia and Singapore. So we'd like to ask panelists in terms of, is there anything cooking on that?
Well, that's why. We have to, give Jermaine a bit of time for them to, Singapore EDB to discuss with us on this. But as I said earlier, we have been discussing this with the former MD of EDB, and we are very positive about doing this joint promotion. In fact, Singapore EDB has overseas offices, and we also have overseas offices. That's where the value proposition is, right, for us to really join forces and have a good narrative for both countries to really entice those companies. And some of the companies have been really looked at how do they complement the strength of both countries. I cannot mention names of companies, but they really looked at Johor as one of the locations for them to expand, especially on the supply chain. And this company are basically supplying to major customers in semiconductor industry, and they are in the machinery and equipment, one of the important player in the world. So what they are saying is that this Johor-SEZ really can offer them not just a location for them to do business, but also the enablers. Talking about the local companies, Jacob mentioned this. Of course, we don't forget you, especially the local companies. How do we then support the development of local players, right? This is about spillover that the country will get out of this investment by MNCs. So surely, I think we will work very closely. In fact, I think many of us know that MIDA and EDB have been working very closely. But I think we need to really structure, on our promotion efforts to how do we sell this Johor-SEZ as a high value and high growth kind of investment location for companies.
Well, thanks, Suhaimi, and thanks, Dato'. I fully agree with what Dato' has mentioned. On EDB's end, we are fully committed to this, to work with MIDA to do the joint promotions. I think we see this very clearly as a win-win proposition, as I mentioned earlier. In fact, while I would say that on both EDB and Midas end, actually the work has already begun. We've already undertaken many joint facilitation forums, speaking with companies, fielding requests and inquiries, and making some of these connections to make some of these promotions already happen. Right? Some of these investments are already landing or in the process of doing so. So I think that's work in progress, and that's something certainly we will have to take it forward as we progress with this project. So I would say it's absolutely positive, and we're committed to working with MIDA on this.
Thank you, Jermaine. I'm mindful of the time, and the organizer has kind of instructing me to make sure that we had a hard stop at 11. I think we are kind of 10 minutes away from 11 a.m. But what I would like now to do is maybe get some final thoughts from all the panelists with regards to JS-SEZ, particularly within this environment that we have to put up with, thanks to a certain person that is currently occupying White House in the United States. I mean, if I can get sort of thoughts from all the panelists with regards to JS-SEZ and the future of the world that we are facing right now, the changing global dynamics, the geoeconomics, geopolitical situation. Maybe start from that side.
Sure. If anybody can tell you the future of the world is delusional, nobody can predict the future of the world. But I think it's certainly not helpful, this on again, off again, but a certain person, I think we can just call him out, right? So, but President Trump is obviously not helpful. And I think for businesses, the fear of the unknown is actually the worst for businesses. And we are indeed living in a period where the fear of the unknown is the highest. Nobody's going to know what's going to happen after 90 days, right? 70 countries are cutting deals with the US. We know Malaysia is leading a delegation up. We don't know what will happen. Will the reciprocal tariffs continue? And if it continue, at what rate, at what country? We just don't know. And I think this fear of the unknown is the worst for businesses. So to be quite candid, businesses that we talk to are all just holding still, right? They have to make sense. They have to take action immediately to mitigate because business have to go on. But we are also telling businesses, you need to plan ahead. So whatever the case it is, you got to ask yourself about supply chain resilience. You've got to ask yourself, how do you diversify your production base? You've got to ask yourself, number one, is US a key market for you? If US is a key market, then you've got to ask yourself, where are you going to produce to support the US? Are you really going to go back and supply to US and produce in US? Is that even viable? If that is not viable, you've got to look for another location, right? For you to continue to support US. What will your calculations be? It's not just a tariff rate, right? It's the overall competitiveness compass. The cost of labor, the cost of transportation, as well, of course, the presence of the supplier base. You've got to ask yourself that even despite whatever tariffs that's going to happen, and we now know that 10% is the new low, right? So there's no more zero, it's 10% is the new low. Can you get a competitive edge by finding a location, notwithstanding the tariff? At the same time, yes, businesses don't like, governments may not want to talk about it, but are there tariff arbitrage opportunities then? Right? And we don't know what's the final rate that Malaysia will get, after the negotiations. But if indeed Johor-Singapore SEZ, if you can achieve the twinning operations, where you can meet the rules of origin, right? By leveraging on the best in class in Singapore and Malaysia and make use of Singapore's 10% tariff rate, then there will be savings. But of course, you've got to meet the rules of origin. But let's take the lens away. Yes, we are now very occupied with US and the rest of the world, but the US trade only accounts for, I was told, 13 to 15% of world trade. So there's another huge 85% of trade that's happening outside US. That is a great opportunity. So how do you then support that? And I'm glad that my friend Jacob mentioned Malaysia has about 16 FTAs. Well, you combine with Singapore's 27 thereabout FTAs, you practically cover the whole world. Right, so these FTAs are an opportunity for us to deepen, right? The integration between Singapore and Malaysia to Johor-Singapore SEZ. And I believe that JS-SEZ can be that competitive economic powerhouse to support even the markets outside of US. Question is that we need to turn that potential into reality by speeding up the implementation that has been said and be even more bold in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of talent development, in terms of making it much easier to do business in Johor? Thank you.
Jacob.
Okay, I think, well, I was born in the age where our family are quite poor, okay? In fact, globalization, free trade, has actually made the world much better. It has brought many, many people out from poverty, okay? And to be educated, to have a decent life, and you know, you can travel and see the world. So globalization and open trade has done humanity a great favor. And with the more and more politically right inclined nation that we are observing, it is definitely not good for Malaysia. Because for both Malaysia and Singapore, I believe we are all export-driven country. So we need the world market. As for ASEAN, I do think that there will be more collaboration need to be done. Johor-Singapore SEZ is a very solid example in this very dynamic world, an example of collaborations of two nations. And we do hope to see ASEAN not just being very competitive among one another with our peers, but we can be more collaborative. And for the policymakers, for the business community, we need to probably imagine how and in what way we can, besides competing, but at the same time collaborating and create a win-win situation, as what our former Prime Minister Tun Mahathir always say, enrich thy neighbor. That is the good policy. So I do hope and suggest, hope JS-SEZ will have a very wonderful result and setting a model, not just for ASEAN, but also for the world. Thank you.
Thank you. During this time of uncertainty, I think it's very important that to see this commitment by both sides, by Singapore and Malaysia, to remain open to trade, to investment, to free flow of capital and people, right? So really at this point in time, regional economic integration remains more vital than ever. And as Jacob mentioned, really the Johor-Singapore SEZ is a good example of that, right? It's how we will use this model of twinning to make both sides more attractive and competitive than if Singapore or Johor were to go in it alone, right? And this is again reinforced by this long-term commitment. But of course, as the panel has also discussed, it's really about translating all this into reality. It's about making sure that things happen on the ground, right? And that's why actually on the government's end, we're working hard, discussing the various issues to make sure that it happens. And we are positive that it will happen. We're confident that we can do it. Because if we can do it, then it's really about creating something that's a win for Malaysia, a win for Singapore, a win for businesses, and also a win for Southeast Asia. And that's what we aspire and look forward towards. Thank you.
I think for Malaysia, this uncertainty, as what our minister mentioned, right? The strategy is to engage, to diversify, and to reforms, right? Engage means that, of course, now we have what they call the plan to go to the US and try to understand what do they need and so on and so forth. So it's not a negotiation team yet, to be led by our minister and of course MK2, but to really understand what basically US wants to do. Then the team will come back and discuss with other ministries and so on. And the other part is to also understand the feedback from companies. We have done this engagement with industry players, associations, and a few others. And many of them are still evaluating what are the impacts. That they will, experience and stuff like that. But one of the panelists did mention about, US is not everything. We have so many other, trade partners. In fact, for Malaysia, the trade with US as compared to total trade is just about 11%, something like that. And we have another, 80% trade potential with other countries. So what is important is how do we then strengthen and strategize with other countries, right? For us to increase this trade. If you looked at ASEAN, for example, we don't do enough, I believe, right? That is another very, important market. Within ASEAN, we need to increase that trade and also investment. As I shared earlier on, we don't do also enough investment flows within ASEAN countries. So that in itself is, very good opportunities for us to be more resilient, right? Among ASEAN countries, for example, just now we did, Jacob did mention about within ASEAN, we are pushing this supply chain among, companies in ASEAN. So that again will ensure the resiliency of ASEAN as an economic bloc that will then have more attractive for foreign investors to come to this region, right, to do business. The other important portion is for the country to keep reforming on our regulation, not just within Malaysia, but across ASEAN countries. How do we then harmonize procedures and regulation in some of the industries, in pharmaceutical, for example, right? Automotive standards and regulation. I believe we need to look at all these areas where it will then make ASEAN as a greater location for trade and investment, and Johor-SEZ can actually fund that, with investments in high growth, high value sectors that will then can explore ASEAN as another big markets and with a non-US market in the world. So a lot of things to do, but I think we are optimistic that we can pull this through. Thank you.
Perfect, Dato'. 11 a.m. on the dot. I truly enjoy this conversation. I just wish we have more time, but I trust this session has been fruitful and informative with insightful takeaways to all of you. And please show our appreciation to the panelists.
All right, so a big thank you to Mr. Suhaimi Ilias and all our panelists for that discussion. Before we end, let's have a quick group photo. Hence, can I get all the photographers to come in front to take the photo of our moderator and also all of our panelists. So can I get the official photographer to come in front, please?